Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking about the fundamentals of building amazing mobile apps with the Salesforce SDK. So before we get started, this is everybody's favorite slide at this point. I think we're at day 3 of Dreamforce. You've probably seen this quite a few times already. But just a reminder, Salesforce is a publicly traded company. We are going to potentially be making forward-looking statements in this presentation, so please make any purchase decisions based on currently available functionality. Okay, so that's out of the way. You just got a day and a half more of looking at that slide. So, oops, I think we missed a slide there. There we go. So let's talk a little bit about the Salesforce Mobile SDK. So we're always talking to our customers and partners and looking at the mobile landscape, trying to get a good understanding of what is necessary to make a successful enterprise mobile app. What qualities does a successful enterprise mobile app need to have? What does it need to be capable of? We've kind of boiled that down to 5 key areas that we look at. First and foremost is always security, right? So some mobile use cases don't necessarily have strong authentication or identity requirements, but we know in the enterprise that's pretty much a given, especially when we get into regulated environments. And our users don't want to have to worry about that. They just want the app to work. They don't have to notice or detect that we're doing anything extra to give them the appropriate level of security. The next is around secure storage. So obviously data security is always important, but it becomes even more important in the enterprise. If we're looking at data like financial services or healthcare, we know sometimes there's regulatory environments where we need to be able to certify or meet certain regulations around how we're handling that data at rest. We want to make sure that our mobile apps always have a good plan for holding on to that data in a secure way. The next is offline access. So it's 2018. I think a while ago we thought it would be a pretty safe assumption that we would have LTE coverage everywhere and everything would be fine. Maybe the occasional sunspot we would have to worry about. But we know really our apps need to be capable of working offline at any time. We know there's some cases where we know there isn't going to be any connectivity. You could be in a rural area or an industrial environment, like maybe the basement, someplace here like Moscone Center, or maybe someplace like a hospital where there's no Wi-Fi, by regulation. And we want to make sure that our mobile apps just look and feel the way they're supposed to every time. Whether you've got a strong signal, a weak signal, or no signal, the app should just do what it needs to do without the user being able to tell or worry about what's happening with their connectivity. Next is messaging. So we always want to make sure our applications have a great user experience, they have a good design, they're easy to navigate, it's easy to find the data that we're looking for. But where mobile apps really get powerful is when we can service those push notifications, right? We can bring the data to the user where and when it's relevant, and that's really where apps really shine. So we want to make sure we have good capabilities around messaging. And finally, scalability. Really, you want to make sure it's as easy to build an app for 100,000 users as it is for 100 users. Fortunately today, with the availability of so many cloud services, is not quite a concern that as we used to have, where you had to worry about building out your own infrastructure, your own services, and scaling those through updates and upgrades. But we also want to make sure that we're always aware of that when we build our mobile apps, that we do have a good plan for scalability. So let's take a look at what we try to provide in the mobile SDK to meet those needs. So we talked about 5 things there, but before I get started, there's one thing I'll call out that's actually missing from this slide, and that's user experience. I mentioned a little bit when we talked about the push notifications that we always want to make sure we have a great, elegant design, and that our apps are easy to use, they're fun, that they're engaging, and that's actually not something that we help you with the mobile SDK. And the reasoning behind that is, if you're going to be building a custom mobile app from scratch, you've probably got pretty specific requirements around what that user experience needs to be. You're probably going to have tight use cases, like specific click paths. So anything that we would try to provide out of the box is probably going to get overwritten anyway. So we really leave that up to the developer to determine what is the best design and what is the best experience for their users. You'll see in a moment when we get into the demo, there are some things we do provide, like authentication, like that's a pretty basic one, like a login screen with the username and password. Like we'll definitely give that to you. But when it comes to the rest of the user experience, we really defer to the developer to define what they need to build. All right, so let's talk about these first 2 things at the top. They kind of work as a team to handle offline and storage of your data. So the Smart Sync Data Framework allows you to keep data up to date on the device. you can, as a developer, define what data you care about, what objects, and within those objects, what records do I care about. And you don't have to worry about keeping them synchronized to the device, either upwards or downwards. So make a change on the device, that should go up to the org. You make a change in the org, that should go down to the device. We'll take care of that. You don't have to worry about kicking off a synchronization or babysitting one to make sure it finishes. And that data we pull down onto the device is going to get stored in our Smart Store encrypted database. This definitely takes care of secure storage for your data at rest. But the nice part about this is that it's also fully integrated with Salesforce Identity. So what identity means is, what is the user allowed to see and do? Like, what are the sharing rules? So if for some reason somebody loses read access to opportunities, overnight, you don't have to go worry about taking an action in the mobile app to clean up the schema because you don't have opportunities there anymore. That's automatically going to get taken care of for you. So again, those top two really work as a team to handle both the offline the offline data sync and storage of that data on the device. The next for security for OAuth and MDM. So if we only handle the session management, that would be huge, right? Being able to handle making sure that you're always able to get access to Salesforce without having to worry about, what's the state of my session? Do I need to renew it? So we definitely take care of that, but we also offer a lot more. We have support for things like certificate-based authentication in addition to OAuth, or for single sign-on. We also have integration available for MDM. We support common MDM keys. So if you're in an environment where your customer is using mobile device management to regulate a device, they may want to do things like provision a certain certificate or prevent the application on the device from being able to copy data, put it on the clipboard, and paste it out somewhere else. So what's really nice is we got that full suite of security that comes in the SDK. But with that MDM, it's nice to be able to say as a developer, like, I have an application that I'm going to offer you, and by the way, it works with your MDM system as well, which is pretty nice. The next is messaging, push notifications. So when that app comes to life on the device, on the user's device, we'll take care of registering for the push services with either Apple or Google, and we'll give that information back to the org, the push tokens that we get from them. So when that notification-worthy event happens in your customer's org, we can send that, or say you can send that notification right out to the device. So we'll handle the registration, storing those tokens, and also we'll handle that connection out to the push provider. So you don't have to go out and find another third party to handle sending of your push notifications. And finally, this is all built on the Salesforce platform, which is really quite scalable and very flexible. You don't have to worry about upgrades or you're adding additional capacity or adding additional hardware. That's really just kind of the table stakes with Salesforce. We make sure that we always take care of that for you. So we just kind of ran through what we feel are some of the key attributes or traits of a quality mobile application and what we try to offer in the mobile SDK. So this will have a little bit more context when we look at our demo where we'll actually show you how an app gets built, and you'll see just how much of this you get just off the shelf, how much of this we provide to you so you can really get started and just start building your app right away. So with this, I'll hand it over to my colleague here, Wolf, who's going to give us a demonstration of building a native app using Swift. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Wolfgang. I work in the Mobile SDK team. I'm going to show you how you can actually get started building an application. So the first step is we have an NPM package called Force iOS if you want to build an iOS native application. And it's quite simple. You do force iOS create from the command line. It's going to ask you a few questions. So, okay, I want Swift. Let me call this app something, the bundle ID, by org. And then it's going to build a runnable Xcode workspace. So right now it's putting the dependencies. It's going to take a few minutes. So instead of waiting, let me show you what it would look like. Let me make this just a little bit bigger. So this is what you get. So what you get here is an Xcode workspace. This is Xcode 10. And let me run the app first so we can see what came out of the generation. All right, so it's going to build the app. And then it's going to bring up the simulator. It's going to deploy the app to the simulator or to a device if it's hooked up to your laptop. Here we go. And the first thing you see is a login screen. So let me do a quick login to a DevOrg user I created before the demo. All right. Next, I'm going to see the typical, auth approval screen where I say, yes, I allow this app to get access to my data. And finally, I get a simple table with a list of user. So this is what you get out of the box. So a super simple app. The idea was to already illustrate the key functionality, right? So I did a login flow, and I pulled some data from the server very easily. So let's have a quick look at the code to see how that actually happened. So first class I want to look at is the app delegate. So the app delegate is so it's in every iOS application. This is the entry point into your application if you want. So it deals with app level events. For instance, what you do when the app finishes launching, what you do when the app is foregrounded or backgrounded, what you do when you get push notifications and things like that. So we generate a app delegate for you. A lot of the code in here is commented out, and you can bring it in if it applies to your use case, or you have push notification, just uncomment this and you're good to go. The 3 lines of code that are here are the 3 lines of code responsible for showing the login screen. So we did the login screen as soon as you launch the app, but of course you could do that later if it doesn't satisfy your use case. And it's already just done with 1 line. So I say do a login if required, and then show that screen, the root view controller. It's if required because basically after the first time, your refresh token will be securely stored into the keychain, and you won't have to go through a login flow again. And this is the exact same code you need regardless of the type of authentication you do. Cert-based, all the things that Josh mentioned before. Those you can change, and the app doesn't have to change, right? So the administrator can configure authentication to be a bit different, and it's still going to be just that 1-liner in your app code to make it work. Next, I want to show you the root view controller. So this is the main screen of this simple app. And it's a table view controller. So table view controller is something you get on iOS when you want to do anything that deals with a table. So here we left the table unstyled. So we didn't put any colors or icons. We want you to see the key code that's, the thing I think that's interesting about the template is to see how to get data from Salesforce, not to show you how to turn a cell blue or red or add swipe actions and things like that. And the code responsible for getting the data from the server is right here. So upon loading the view, what I do is I build a request. I want to run some SOCL on the server. So I do that in 1-liner. It's a query request, and here's the SOCL query. And I say, send that request to the REST client. And that's it. And I don't have to deal with low-level details. I don't need to know the API versions. I don't need to know the endpoint I'm supposed to hit on the server, how the parameter is supposed to be sent over. Is it on the URL? Is it the post body? Is it a get? Do I need to URL encode anything? So none of that matters to you. You just call that method, and it's going to build the right request for you. Also, when you send the request, you don't see any of the authentication stuff in here, right? But that request is being sent with your access token. If the access token is expired, we do a refresh flow. And then we replay the request with a new access token. So all of those things happen transparently under the hood. And for you, all you have to focus on is, okay, what data am I getting? For instance, I could change it to contacts. And what do I do with the data when it comes back? Just put it back into the table view. So I made a quick change to the app just to show you that when you run the app again, there's no login screen. And that changing from one object to the other was super easy. It was just a few character change. All right, so before I wrap up, let me show you one last thing we have. So recently we added a feature to Mobile SDK, which is what we call the dev tools. So it's completely disabled in an app you put in the App Store, but it's very useful for apps that you test internally, alpha testing, beta testing. What happens is that if you do the shake gesture, which you can do physically if you have the device or through the menu, if you're using a simulator, you get a little dev menu that pops up on top of your app. It has a number of useful functions in there. It can show you a lot of information about your app, the SDK version you're using, MDM settings, if it applies, auth settings and stuff like that. And it's very useful when you have alpha testers, in your organization that are not using Xcode and deploying themselves, right? They picked up an enterprise build, and they're like, something doesn't work. You want to quickly check what they're dealing with. It's super easy to do that way. It also has actions that you're probably going to build into your app eventually, but you might not have that on day one, right? I want to be able to log out. I want to be able to switch users, which is something Mobile SDK support, right? You can be logged in as multiple users. We partition the data. We partition the refresh tokens and things like that. So all those actions are available to you on day one without having to add any code. And we find that very useful, and we had some good feedback from developers. And that's what I had. So just to recap, it took me a few minutes. First, I ran Force iOS. Then I brought up the app in Xcode. I was able to run it. And the code that was responsible for doing both auth or pulling data from servers was very simple and very easy to read. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Wolf. That was a great demo.
Oh, you got it. Where is it?
Let's see if we can get
Oh,
those
it's right
slides
here.
back. All right. So hopefully everybody was able to get a good feeling of just how much we're able to provide there, kind of as table stakes to get you started. We get all that scaffolding in place. Just by running that command force iOS create, you get a brand new app that gets created. You're kind of at the point where you get like a hello world, right? You can start playing with it right away. So getting over that first hump where you actually have like a living and breathing app and you can just start playing with it, I think is really key and really help you get started building apps quickly. So let's take a look at a little bit what's coming up for the Mobile SDK. So hopefully we've all heard about this fantastic announcement that we made Monday morning, our new strategic partnership with Apple, which we're really excited about. We've actually got a dedicated space just so that I can see it from here. We can see there's an Apple and a Salesforce logo next to each other, just kind of over here towards the, when you walk back on your left. So please stop by if you've got any questions about this. But really what we're doing, we're excited here because what we're doing is we're bringing together what really is the best devices out there, the best hardware, and we're combining that with the power of the awesome CRM capability that we have at Salesforce. And there's a few key pillars to this arrangement. The first is leveraging the latest iOS technology in the Salesforce mobile app. So I'm not sure if some of you were able to attend some of the roadmap sessions for the Salesforce mobile app, but we're showing you how we're really doing our best, and Apple's giving us a lot of help to modernize a lot of our user experiences by taking advantage of new functionality, like doing long presses on notifications and seeing more data, or being able to access information in different ways within the mobile application. So as these newer devices are coming out every couple of years, and the new versions of iOS come out every fall, like we just had iOS 12 released, we're going to be able to take advantage of those new features in the Salesforce mobile app straight away. The next thing is we're also doing a lot to optimize the SDK that we just looked at. So a lot of the code that we just looked at was optimized for Apple's Swift language. We've done a lot of cleanup in the code to make everything nice and neat and compact and a much better fit for the natural flow that comes with the Apple Swift language. And we're also, like the Salesforce mobile app we'll be doing, we're going to be starting to take advantage of more features and functionality in the new versions of iOS and the new Apple hardware as soon as it comes out. There's also some great new content on Trailhead. Apple actually worked with us to author this content. So if you want to learn how to program in Swift or learn how to use the Xcode development environment that we just saw where Wolf was building the app, we've got some great content on that. And actually, if you come over to our shared space here, you can actually take those Trailhead modules, and we've got Apple engineers just hanging out, ready to help you. So it's almost kind of like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get taught these tools by the folks who actually built them at Apple. So we're really excited about that. And finally, coming soon, they're going to help us build a Trailhead mobile app. So all the power of the Trailhead learning, you'll be able to take it with you. So we're really excited about this. And next, we can talk a little bit about what's coming up in the SDK. So I just mentioned we've optimized all of our code for Swift and native iOS. We're also going to be doing some more around Face ID support. I mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking about UX, how we try not to do a whole lot because we know you're going to have custom use cases. But there are some things we do want to provide out of the box. So we're going to be working to provide a little bit more around our authentication for Face ID support. So if the admin has a setting configured where the app locks itself after a few minutes of inactivity, instead of having to manually punch in a code, you can just look at the app, or on a Touch ID enabled device, just use your fingerprint to unlock it. We're going to be adding some more capabilities around mobile application management. So we have some MDM support, but maybe an organization, they don't want to take control of the device. Yeah, you can bring your own device and use it at work, but we just want to control our app. We don't want to take over your whole phone. We're going to offer some more capabilities around that. New templates and sample apps. We just looked at a pretty basic sample app. We're going to offer a lot more of those in the future. Have them be much more rich content and get you way beyond hello world, sample applications. Enhanced notification support. So one of the great things about mobile is notifications. So right now we've got pretty basic support, but we're going to do some work to make sure you can take advantage of actions on notifications, or the enhanced content you get like on your iOS device when you do that long press and you get a lot more content that pops up. And also background data sync, which we know is a biggie, right? This has kind of been a big challenge for a while. We talked about that, our offline sync capability that we have, but on some devices, if the app goes into the background, that sync may not complete until it comes into the foreground again. So we're going to be doing our best to ensure that we can get a real predictable completion time for those syncs. That smart sync framework will make sure it completes, but occasionally you may have to bring the app into focus before that'll happen again. So I see we just ran out of time, and I want to thank everyone for coming. We purposefully did not leave any time for questions because we're trying to turn these sessions over real quick. But Wolf and I will hang out for a few minutes if anybody's got any questions. And again, we've got our shared space with Apple over here. We're talking about our SDK, so please drop by if there's anything we can help you with. So thanks everyone for coming. Hope you're having a great time at Dreamforce.